Welcome to the live Q&A with Mark Charles from Heritage Law. And say hi, Mark.
How's it doing? Good to see everybody.
Yeah, so Mark practices. Quite a few of you guys have probably met Mark. He practices real estate law with a focus on investment properties. So he's presented at our physical meetups. And yeah, so we thought during this time we would like to address some questions that are kind of regarded, that have to do with our current environment with COVID-19 and social distancing and how we're applying that to our businesses and evolving every day. What we'll do after we get the questions done is you can have the option of either putting out a group chat. If you guys are familiar with the platform, down near the bottom, you can hit the chat button. You can send a private chat to Amanda if you don't feel like posing the question in the group, or you could put it in the group, ask the question, and once we're done with our questions we have there now, we'll get to those. If we don't have time to answer everybody's questions, because we do want to respect everybody's time today and try and keep it, as close to an hour as possible, then please still send them along and we'll get them answered to you either in the meetup forum or on our Facebook page or directly to you if you'd prefer to ask the questions in that. So I'll introduce Mark, and Mark, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get right to some questions.
Absolutely. So again, my name is MarkCharles. I know that I have met a lot of you either through the meetup or through the industry. Again, I am a real estate and business lawyer. So I practice real estate law, residential, commercial. I do have a focus on income properties, whether that is the residential apartment building or commercial rentals. I also do commercial work as well. So our firm, Heritage House Law, is a mid-sized firm here in Dartmouth. I've got a team of about 20 that work with me at the office. So I also practice in corporate structure, so I can help you set up incorporated companies, interpret contracts, commercial leases, all of that good stuff that surrounds running a real estate business. So happy to be here. I work with Greg, Amanda often, so happy to be here and take part in the webinar.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I'm going to get right into some questions we have here. And like I said, you guys can start piling in your questions through the chat or wait till we get to that point. So Mark, I guess the first question I have is how COVID-19 and isolation changed the way you conduct your individual legal practice.
And I've got some notes here, so I apologize if I'm looking a little off screen, but it's going to help keep me on track. I think that the most significant part of that question is the social distancing and the isolation. That's really what's changed my practice in particular, and I'd say all legal practice is taking away the face-to-face meeting. And I think that's how a lot of people are used to meeting with the lawyers, whether it is a phone call, but it's oftentimes the come into my office, meet me face-to-face, we'll go over the documents, sign them. So what I've done specifically, I tried to get a little ahead of the curve. I was of course, we were all watching the news as the crisis started to unfold, and it started to get closer to home, especially much more at the beginning of March. And there were a lot of questions about, what are your plans in March break, and so on. So I tried to get ahead of the curve. And what I've done is set up a completely remote operating law firm here in my office. So I have, of course, computer capabilities, online internet capabilities, but remote access to our online database, our server, which is housed off-site. So I'm able to access all of my electronic files, all of my electronic data, manipulate email, and so on. I also put in, printing, scanning capabilities, which isn't necessarily something that you would always have. Most offices at the time working from home, you could simply PDF documents, but here we now also need to consider how do we print out and sign documents that clients will need. And then the final thing that I added, of course, was this webcam. So this was new to me from my operation standpoint. And so that was the final piece. So how it's really changed my practice is taking away my face-to-face time with clients, but replacing it with other means, emails, phone calls. I was always quite heavy with phone calls, but now the opportunity to meet face-to-face online.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what I really like about you and the way you're conducting your business now is a lot of people in your industry. This is a big shock to them. They're
Absolutely.
probably a little bit behind the curve because this is, the technology, and B, this just not been the way that they've conducted business. They're used to the office environment, and when they're home, that's completely separate. I guess that can be said, true for a lot of us, but I think more in your industry.
Absolutely. And there's a real divide in our industry with the large firms because, of course, they have larger budgets, larger capabilities, but they don't often deal with residential properties. They have larger clients, and maybe they're looking more so into larger commercial clients. So a lot of the mid-sized firms are the ones that I think do the traditional amount of residential income property work. And they are the ones who, we are the ones who are maybe at a disadvantage with regards to technology budgets, and then just infrastructure already set up. So a decision I'd made previously to have the remote access set up and created, it really did give me the ability to kind of jump ahead because I just saw it coming. And I said, well, it's time for me to learn how to do this because it's going to become a demand.
Yeah, that's definitely. Are you seeing that with your colleagues, like other people? And yeah. So you're seeing some adaptation happening everywhere.
Absolutely. And we've seen the whole gamut. And of course, it changed throughout the crisis. When the crisis was first hitting, it would be very common that you'd call up, your colleague, you're on the other side of a deal, and you'd say, so where are you? Are you at home? What are you guys doing, right? Like, are you operational or what? And so we really got a lot of feedback from within the industry. The majority of people with the ability to work online are doing so.
Yeah. That's a great point. Kind of leads into my next question too, and how the industry as a whole is kind of moving forward and adapting to this kind of day, what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're getting a little feedback here. You got muted here. Sorry, Mark.
That's okay. When we think of how the industry has changed, and that really kind of, I think, flows smoothly into this answer, it really was a day-to-day challenge and a day-to-day change. When the crisis hit, I mean, the market was busy. I mean, I think the numbers reported for March, even on MLS, it showed that there was a bit of a raise even from last year in the period. So we were steady. And of course, we all have deals that are already lined up. Some of the questions became, how do I close this deal today? But then what about those deals that are further down the road, the one in 2 weeks, the one in a month? What are we doing to support that? So what I found was the majority of the industry has moved to an online format, at least the online opportunity. You saw a lot of firms kind of just slowly whittle down to the most required staff that need to be in the office, and then give everyone the opportunity to have these kind of online meetings. It's very difficult to eliminate the entire need for an office in a real estate transaction, because we still need to receive documents.
Mhm.
We need to receive packages. We need to receive deposits. Keys, not so much anymore, of course, just from the standard in the industry. But it was quite often that we did find that we still needed a place where deliveries could be received. But other than that, we have the ability to communicate and work back and forth between the lawyers as well as the clients. So we sort of had the two angles to determine how do we deal with the client, how do we deal with the other lawyer. At the same time, we were trying to figure out how to work as an industry. The Barrister Society was very active, doing a lot of research, sending out a lot of circulars on this is how we suggest you move, and so on. The land registry was very responsive as well. The courts were responsive, and so everyone was really looking at this issue facing forward. The Barrister Society has relaxed some of the registration requirements. The land registry has relaxed some of the registration requirements. So what we are able to do now is what's called online signings. And all of this was in an effort to complete social distancing and deal with isolation in all aspects. So when we were also trying to figure out how we're going to deal with our clients, how we're going to deal with other lawyers, we also had to determine, well, how are we going to deal with the court? Court's closed. How are we going to deal with the land registry? At one point in the first week, the land registry's policy was, we won't let you in the building, we can't take a delivery. There's a box in the parking lot. Call us. And so, I mean, that may have been a more extreme measure, but the government was very quick on, we are adopting very strict isolation policies, and we had to deal with that, daily. Banks have restricted their hours, as I've seen more so this week. There are certain banks only open until 3 o'clock now.
Wow.
Yeah. So if there's no more 4:30 closings, right? If you don't have it by 2:30, then you're pushing for the extension for the next day.
So we should be doing our closing inspections, I guess, first thing in the morning. We're trying to close same day.
Absolutely. I always think it's best to do it as early. I know 9 o'clock was considered early. I mean, if you can get your clients there any earlier, it'll buy you more time. If you're even there at 8 o'clock, it just gives us all more time to get the deal processed and closed.
Yeah.
And so the industry has now accepted these online meetings, and they have reduced the requirement for original signatures. I think that is one of the most significant changes.
Yeah, that's huge, because you don't need the blue ink anymore, right?
We only need one.
Only need
So we no longer have to meet with the client and have their blue ink and my blue ink.
Yeah.
So we can meet online, and they can sign, and if they scan that back to me, my blue ink will make it an original document and make it registrable. And then, of course, combined with my system here, I can upload your deed or record your mortgage or release your mortgage or change your access type. All of my property online work I can do from right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. It's nice to see that, every industry is adapting so fast. Like the velocity of this happening right now, like in our real estate industry, in the grocery stores, you see the systems they have in place. I mean, it's awesome how fast we all seem to be adapting to this whole crazy new norm. So yeah, I guess all of us.
And I think most industries are now also willing to look at some of these things, whereas maybe before these would have been good ideas, but weren't quite forefront. I've always, appreciated the real estate industry with their ability to sign online.
Yeah.
The dot loop program, you guys, if the clients have a phone, it's so much more accessible for clients, especially when the negotiations are going on, because you have to get a hold of your client sometimes in the bridge of 2 hours and get a signature, right? So
Yeah.
I've always appreciated the opportunities you guys have and the work that you guys do to get that done.
Yeah, we've always kind of since that technology has become available to us, it's changed the world, because you could sign in your pajamas, which
Yeah.
most people are wearing all day now, so it's perfect. So having programs like that allow people to do things like that are time sensitive, those companies they're on the forefront right now and in big demand. With that being said, how is like a lot of things you don't need to be present for, but what about trust accounts? How are the trust accounts and the money that's coming in, going out, being held? How's that handled?
Unfortunately, our trust accounts are still pretty rigid.
Yep.
They are they'll probably be one of the last areas to change in our regulation here in our province. So our trust accounts are highly regulated. And there hasn't been any indication that those regulations would change. Quite often you see most of the work done with checks. So it still requires the need for our bookkeeper accountant to be in the office, still requires couriers and so on. The reason why our trust accounts are so strictly regulated is that we require paper entries for just about everything that occurs in a trust account. So the historical norm has been, when you're bringing a down payment, when you're bringing a deposit to ourselves, or if you are providing money in trust, it's always certified funds and it's always physical. There is the capability of doing electronic transfers, but electronic transfers require more paperwork. So not only do I have to confirm the money has left an account, I have to confirm my money has entered another account. Right. So it's oftentimes hard to get that confirmation back from the other party or the other party's bank account. So the norm has always been do the checks because it's an easier accounting method. If there's an answer there, maybe more of a bookkeeping answer that comes to forefront, we'd love to do it. So the deposits are still unfortunately going to require face-to-face meetings at some sort. We do allow direct deposits right into our bank. So if you bank with RBC, or if it's easier for you to get to RBC is our trust account, then that is absolutely an option. We provide our trust account particulars. If your bank was RBC, you could go to RBC, request your bank draft, and deposit it there. And that would be one stop. If unfortunately your bank isn't RBC, or if you're not anywhere near an RBC that's open, we would still receive the deposit. But the issuing proceeds of sale or disbursements, adjustments, anything coming back to the client is fast. So we can do that direct deposit with a void check. We can do electronic transfers if necessary, but we employ our own courier. So, unfortunately our courier will have to attend the bank, but it will not require a face-to-face meeting with the client. They can get their money electronically at all times.
Yeah. And most companies, like on our side, most of the brokerages all have some sort of online, whether it be Interact, but there's also a company out there that provides free deposit transfers called Exact Deposit. Really slick company. And I believe, I don't know what the policy and the amount you can go up to, but can actually put it on your credit card in certain circumstances for your deposit. Really? So you can take advantage of getting points and stuff. I know there was a member on here that asked me about points and cards. There's one way when you buy an investment property, you can actually get a few bonus points on your credit card to use as a deposit.
Yeah, that would be really interesting for us to look into, because a lot of clients ask if they can pay credit cards to trust, and unfortunately, we're not set up to do that now,
Yep.
only because we don't know the exact rate or the exact payment until
Mm.
we get it. But it could be the introduction of third parties into the market that could really help us out.
All those,
Because
yeah, all those third-party companies that are providing ease of use stuff right now are really coming in as almost critical. Because you're not running to the bank to get a draft and running it like most people.
yeah, exactly, running there to get a bank draft to say, here's my money, here you go, right? And I guess anywhere we could shave one of those steps off
Yeah.
would be effective for all of us, the client and ourselves, for operations.
So do you think, I'm just looking over at my notes here that I have, like some of the stuff that's happening in your industry, do you think this is kind of the forefront of change when things kind of go back to the new normal after things settle down? Do you think, do you think your industry, I guess, will kind of continue on with using some of these tools and being a little bit more flexible?
Well, I hope so, because our industry, unfortunately, has been one of the slowest to adopt change. We always have been. We've been one of the slowest change adopters throughout. A lot of our industry is still driven by the banks. So the banks themselves, can influence these policies, and the banks were some of the ones that were still requiring blue ink signatures on documents. So I'm hoping what we see is what's called temporary. They're calling it temporary measures right now,
Yep.
but we don't know how long the crisis will continue. We don't know how long it will take to go back, or if we ever go back to the old method. I think you'll probably see a combination. Like, why remove the temporary conditions if they make everything so much better for your client? Why remove them? If they make them better for you, why remove them? But there may be, pushback on older parts of the industry, or maybe clients used to a certain way that want to go back to that certain way, to that I want to come to your office and see you and have a face-to-face meeting. But I think that client, I think that more clients will actually jump on board with the online signing, because there's just so much more freedom. There's so much more capability to do. It's so much more versatile than the old method. And I think that if all the industries are accepting this right now, our regulatories, the Barrister Society is accepting it. The land registry is accepting it. The insurance companies are accepting it. Title insurance is accepting it. The banks are now moving towards accepting it. And they're all sort of going one by one as they continue on, but all of the major banks are really starting to sign on board with this. I don't necessarily see the benefit in taking it away. So I do think that you'll see this ability. This will also save clients. We've got clients in Cape Breton. It'll save that drive in to see me. That's not happening, or find a notary or someone in your area, have them sign, courier it back. It can save all of that time and all of that difficulty, having this opportunity. Yeah.
Totally. Like, I mean, even if you look around before all of this started changing, you go into some of the new RBC branches and stuff, like they're very little staffed because they found efficiencies of using computers and whatnot, and eliminated the need of a lot of face-to-face contact, and while taking those resources and putting them into something else in the company that aids you. But even like for myself, when we first started using all this digital signature, Amanda will say this, like, I wasn't an early adopter. I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to scan this document and fax it and this and that.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself a bit here, but then I started using it. And not the thing I noticed right away was the reaction that we had from the general public. And it was that, oh my gosh, this is so easy. So we saw that efficiency, and then we saw our own efficiencies climbing and climbing and climbing. So probably is going to happen. You know, I think people in your industry will probably adapt to this new way of doing business and say, wow, why haven't we done it this way
Well,
in the past?
I think so, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's also client driven.
Yeah.
So I have had clients, you know, comment on it, or even just some of their questions are, you know, how do I meet you? Right? How are we going to sign this? You know, whereas the question before was, you know, when can I come in for an appointment? And I did have one client ask how he was going to pay. Right? It was a file, and you know, he had an invoice, and he said, "Well, how am I going to pay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I can't come into your office." And I said, "He's right. You know, like, so we have to really make it clear that we have these other electronic methods available to you, whether it's, you know, setting up a meeting or providing a deposit or paying an invoice."
Yeah. Well, that's it's nice to see these efficiencies, and I think if we can look for a positive in any of these situations, is that, you know, we'll be better equipped to provide services to our clients in the future.
Yeah.
Going over to some actual law, and I know we don't have a whole lot of cases. Day by day, things are changing, and everything is new. How do you think real estate law will come into effect when buyers or sellers try to terminate without an exit clause based on either employment status or you know, a sickness or a quarantine or things like that?
I haven't had to deal with it directly yet, but it has been there's been a lot of talk about it. We've had a lot of discussions within the industry, other colleagues of myself, just our bar society, the Canadian Bar Association. It's a very hot button right now to say, what do we do here in the event this gets worse, or in the event